Welcome,
This
everybody.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome, everybody. And a special thank you to the Etten family, to Merle and her daughter, who sponsored our Lunch and Learn in memory of her husband, Leon. You remember Leon was a regular attendee, passed away a number of months ago. And it's a nice story. I met Leon and he became an attendee. I was checking out of Wholesome Choice and I saw some friendly looking people who were buying some challah. So I struck up a conversation with them. In the end, their daughter had gone to Israel with Natalie on one of her trips. So we spoke further. I told him that he should join some classes online. We'd love to have him join. And he did, and he became a regular attendee. Sadly, he became sick a little later on and then passed away a number of months ago. So his wife and family sponsored the Lunch and Learn in memory of Leon and in gratitude to this group right over here that he was a part of. Okay, so today's topic is Lag BaOmer, which is the day that we are in. And it's a little bit strange, right? We're in the midst of counting the Omer. We have the rabbinic overlay on top of that, which is that there are elements. Oh, so good to see you. How are you, Lenore? Whoa, wonderful. Did I send you the email? Did I not send it to you? Were you on the list that I sent it to? Did you get
Which email are we talking about?
the source sheet?
I don't know.
Okay, well, anyhow, it's on the screen, so we'll follow over there. Okay, so we just got started, and we also paid tribute to the sponsor today, who was Merle Etten, in honor of her husband, Leon Etten, of blessed memory. So today's Lag BaOmer. And like I said, we have our Torah level mitzvah of counting the days from Pesach until Shavuot, keeping in mind, of course, our Shavuot night learning. So please do sign up to give a presentation. Kathy, we'd love to have you come and give a presentation on one of a 5-6 minute presentation on one of the books of the Nevi'im, of the prophets, and how it either is messianic or how it's been distorted by those who try to insert a false Messiah. So I'd love to have you join and take one or two of those slots.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay?
You could do
Good,
it.
good, good. I'm
Not
sorry.
me.
I said
Okay.
you could do it.
Okay, Lenore. I know you're playing things safe. So we're counting the days from Pesach until Shavuot, until we get to hear Kathy give her presentation. That's what we're counting the days until. And also, we have that overlay. We have the overlay of the mourning for the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva. And then comes Lag BaOmer. And last night we had a bonfire, and I was playing guitar, and we had music playing, and we had a nice barbecue, hot dogs, hamburgers. The kids were shooting arrows. What's that about? What is this happy day in the middle? What's it all about? We also know it's linked to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? His yahrzeit. Why would his death be a reason to have a joyous day celebration? And how do we understand some of the minhagim, some of the customs that have come our way on Lag BaOmer? So let us begin. We know that last year there was a tragic event that took place at the massive, massive celebration that takes place yearly in Israel on Lag BaOmer. Lag is 33, the 33rd day of the Omer. And last year was tragic. It was overcrowded and people lost their lives there. But this year, Baruch Hashem, to the best of my knowledge, it went smoothly, safely. When I lived in Israel, I one year did go to Meron, and it's amazing. You go to Jerusalem, and there's a certain spot there where you just pay for a ticket, get on the bus, and the bus fills up and goes. Next bus fills up and goes. all night. The buses are going. Whenever you're ready to come back, you go to the spot over there in Meron, you show your ticket, and you get onto a bus. It fills up, next bus. It's just incredible. Everybody flocks to the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this, like I said before, is a joyous day, a celebratory day in the midst of the normal mourning practices that we have throughout Sphira. So let's where this is coming from. So source number one, we have the Gemara Yevamot, which actually we went through briefly during our Chumash class this past Tuesday morning as we connected this to Shemitah. If anybody would like to catch up on that, it is available online. So the Gemara tells us, the Gemara in Yevamos tells us the following story. Following teaching, I should say. Rabbi Akiva would say, Lamad Torah, if you learn Torah in your youth, bi'alduso, Yilmad Torah b'zaknuso. Continue. Learn Torah even in your older age. Haylo Talmina bi'alduso. You had students, disciples, during your early years. Yilo Talmina b'zaknuso. You should have students, disciples, in your older years. Shanemar, as the pasuk says, Baboker zareh zarecha. In the morning, plant your seeds. Ube'erev lo yimosh yadecha, something like that. In the evening, do not let al tamush yadecha. Don't let your hand rest. Amru. Along these lines, it was stated, Shnei Masar Elef Zugim Talmidim. Hayla Rabbi Akiva. Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. Notice how we speak about chavrutas, student pairs. Right? Hard to learn on your own. The best learning is when you are engaged with others. He had 12,000 pairs of students that filled the area Megavat ad Antifras. The Kulan Meitu beperek echad. They all died within this time period. Within a specific time period, one time period, because they did not show proper honor according to their level, one to the other. Olam Shamim, and the world, the Torah world, was desolate. Ad Shabbat Rabbi Akiva came to Rabotenu, to the rabbis in the Darom in the south. V'shanalem, and he taught them. Who were they? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi ben Shamua. Those 5 students, Ve'heim heim hamidu, Torah otashah. They are the ones who established Torah at that time, and the continuity of Torah that we have, the Torah Shebal Peh, flows through Rabbi Akiva and these Talmidim. Tana was taught there. Kula Meitu, they all died during which time period? Mi Pesach v'ad Atzeret. They all died between Pesach and Atzeret. And Rav Chamer Abba says the death they died was a very painful death that they died. And then comes Lag BaOmer, and they stop dying. So we celebrate. But that does not seem to make sense when it's viewed superficially. Because why did they stop dying? Because they were all dead. There were none left. Hardly a cause for celebration. The death stopped. There's no one left. So we'll have to, like I said, go beyond a superficial and get a better sense. Let's see sources 2 and 3 first. Breshit Rabbah, the Medrash said, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva said to his new students, Banai, my dear sons, Harishonim lo meitu elashaytainem tsara elu le'elu. My first students died because their eyes were stingy. They did not look generously toward one another. Tenu daitchem, be careful, pay attention, shelo ta'asu k'ma'asehem, that you will not do as they did. Do not repeat their error. Of course, we keep in mind that Rabbi Akiva, his maxim that he lived by every moment was v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So therefore, the students that must have been on their level that they were lacking. on a level that would be demanded from the students of Rabbi Akiva. Einot Tzara, their eyes were not generous, were somewhat stingy. When someone else came up with a good understanding, they felt a little bit, oh, I wish I would have thought of that, as opposed to rejoicing with the idea, the understanding of their fellow, of their chavruta. Rav Aaron Kotler explains very beautifully, source number 3, to explain why Rabbi Akiva's students died for a seemingly trivial sin. Perhaps we can say that Rabbi Akiva was the foundation of the redaction of the oral law, and his students were the ones who would pass on the oral law to future generations. They were the conduit through which the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral law, would flow to us. Therefore, they had to embody the perfection of all the 48 traits. That's the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the 48 ways of wisdom that Rav Noach made very popular. It's the 48 ways to which Torah is acquired. They had to embody these. For if they would lack even one of these traits, they would be lacking in the essence of the acquisition of the Torah and would not be able to transmit it in its proper purity and holiness. Therefore, apart from the fact that God is strict with the righteous to within a hair's breadth, right? The more righteous, if you have a filthy window, you have a filthy window. When you clean the window, that's when you start to see, oh, there's a little smudge over here. Oh, there's a little crack over there. That's with the righteous, God is more demanding. They have purified, then their job is now to purify even further. So therefore, for someone else, which would not even be noticeable, for them it might be a glaring aspect. There was also this idea that since they were lacking in the quality of being close with one's fellow students, one of the 48 ways, their Torah would be fundamentally flawed. Therefore, they were not worthy of passing on the oral law to future generations. Furthermore, their Torah learning itself was deficient. It was not completely pure. And the oral law had to be passed on as a complete Torah Shalema in every way. Therefore, they did not have the merit of having the Torah passed on through them. Instead, it was the Rabbeinu Shebedarom, the rabbis of the south, who merited this. Since the life of the sages is Torah, they were lacking in the essence of their existence, and that allowed for what happened. Interesting, if you notice, the life of the sages is Torah. That's what the Rambam writes in the laws of a Rotseach. And I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure the Rambam over there is talking about a Rotseach is a murderer, that if a person killed inadvertently and has to go to Ir Miklat, so then we send his Rebbe with him. If the Rebbe is sent to Ir Miklat, we send the students with him. Why? Because the pasuk says, V'chai, he needs to live there. How could a Rebbe live without his Talmidim? How could a Talmud live without their Rebbe? Okay. But Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying on this day. But once again, that's hardly a cause of celebration if there were none left anymore. So what is really the essence of this celebration? Okay, so let's see source number 4. Rabbi Akiva was the greatest sage of his generation. It is said that he was the shoresh, the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral teachings, the oral Torah. The line of transmission of the Torah from Sinai to future generations ran through him and his students, who, when these 24 students were decimated, it caused a major depression. How would the chain continue? Who would provide the light of Torah for future generations? How could they ever be replaced? How could a grieving people on the run from Roman persecution be consoled with the loss of so many great men, so crucial to the spiritual survival of the nation? The urge to say it's all over, case closed, I'm going to start to sell insurance or real estate instead of being a Rebbe, must have been overwhelming. The less faithful, more pessimistic among them must have been ready to give up. For Rabbi Akiva recovered from his devastating loss to transmit Torah through a new group of 5 students. It was on Lag BaOmer that he began teaching to these new Talmidim. The cause of celebration is not the cessation of the death, but it is the new start. The seeds he planted that day ultimately produced a massive rejuvenation of Torah. Those are the reasons for celebrating on Lag BaOmer. On this day, we commemorate the renewal. We celebrate determination. As the centuries pass, and as the Romans of every period seek our destruction and annihilation, we faced them and persevered, thus ensuring that our nation and our Torah are alive, flourishing to this day as we sit here towards the end of May, the year 2022. In the wake of a tragedy that would have felled lesser people, Rabbi Akiva strengthened himself, set about ensuring that the chain remains unbroken. So our celebration is not the cessation of death. The celebration is something that is at the very essence, the very core of the Jewish people. And that is when we fall, when we get knocked down, we get up, we dust ourselves off, and we keep on going forward. Lag BaOmer is a celebration of that perseverance, of that unrelenting determination of Am Yisroel Chai. The Torah is our heritage, it is our treasure, and it must be passed along to each subsequent generation. That is the celebration that we have on Lag BaOmer. Again, not the cessation of death. There was no one left to die. That's not a cause of celebration. But this was the day that Rabbi Akiva started teaching anew. And that is our celebration. It is a celebration of Am Yisrael Chai. It is a celebration of the Nitzchiyut HaTorah, the eternity of the Torah. We say Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov. Torah was given to us by Moshe Morasha. Either it is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, or Me'urasa, or it is wedded to, betrothed to, married to the Knesset, Kilat Yaakov, the congregation of Jacob. And that is what we are celebrating on Lag BaOmer. So that is all one aspect of our celebrations. But there is an additional aspect. And we mentioned before everybody going to Miron for the celebrations that take place at Miron, the celebrations for the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. How does that connect? What is that connection? Now, of course, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the Rabbi Shimon of the 5 students that Rabbi Akiva continued and resumed and started teaching. But there is, besides that, a special connection to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Gemara tells us that he had spoken truthfully, but degradingly about the Romans. One of the Rabbanim, one of the rabbis, I believe Rabbi Yehuda, said, amazing what the Romans have done. Amazing marketplaces, amazing bridges, amazing things they've set up over here. And that is what enables us to study Torah, to have all these things at our behest. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, everything they've done for their own good. The marketplaces is so they could have prostitutes available when they want to have prostitutes. The bridges and the roads, that's so they can collect on our easy pass for the East Coasters or our toll roads for those who are here in California. It's to collect their tolls. They're not interested. Well, the Romans heard that. They were not very pleased. They elevated Rabbi Yehuda, who spoke well about them, and they wanted to kill Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He went into hiding with his son, and they were in a cave for a total of 13 years. They were sustained miraculously by a carob tree and a stream of water. And actually, there is another aspect, which you don't go, but the day that the man started to fall after we left Egypt was on Lag BaOmer, on the 33rd day of the Omer. And Shimon Bar Yochai, of course, was sustained in a manna-like fashion. There wasn't man falling from the heaven, but he was also sustained miraculously. So source number 5 is from the Zohar, written by his students, as we'll soon see. On the day, Oto Hayom, on the day of Shimon Yochai was to leave this world, what did he do? Hayam Misader Devarav. He was organizing all of his teachings. Nitkansu Hachaverim Lebeito. His friends, his colleagues came, and he said to them, Ata Shat Ratzonhi. This is a time of favor, of heavenly favor. I can reveal to you holy things that have not been revealed until now. All that day, the fire left his room, and there was no one who was able to approach, as the light and the fire were surrounding him. After he passed away and they came to bury him, the fire flew into the air and danced before him. A voice was heard from heaven saying, a bat kol, a heavenly voice came out saying, come and gather. That said, Alu, va'atu v'itkanshu lihilula de Rabbi Shimon. Come, gather every year for the Hilula, the anniversary of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the idea of a Hilula, Hallel, praise, song, celebration. The idea of a celebration on the day, the yard site that someone passed away, actually makes a lot of sense, because we don't view the person as being lost, gone. The person has moved on. Now, when a child is born, there's great celebration, Mazel Tov. Everyone's crying, everyone's so happy. When they die, everyone's crying, everyone is so sad. When a child is born, who knows what direction? Our understanding is that's a neshama that was taken from the heavens, joined up with its partner, a body, and it now has these 50, 60, 70, 80, 120 years ahead of them. But who knows how that person will fare? Who knows what direction the person will go in? When a person dies at tzaddik, that's the end of that journey. It's been mission accomplished. It's been a successful journey. That is and can be viewed as a source, as a cause of celebration. So again, this is the death day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was one of those 5 students. But it goes, and let's go source number 6, Rav Chaim Vital, who was the student of the Arizal, and the Arizal's writings are basically cannot be understood, and he broke it down in a manner that is understood to those who are versed in Kabbalah, right? And they explain that in a similar way when we say that Moshe was kavad peh or kavad lashon, heavy of the mouth, heavy of the tongue. And a heaviness, some explain as follows. It wasn't that he had a stutter. It wasn't that he had a speech impediment. It was that he had such a clarity of God that when it came to relating that, there are no physical words to explain that lofty clarity of the spiritual that he had. We only have words to describe that which we encounter in our physical world. We don't have words for things that go beyond that. They can't be described. When people have their near-death experiences, the book Life After Life by a Dr. Moody, and he collected all the similarities of these near-death experiences. They speak about a light, but they all say it's not really a light. It's something so far beyond light as we know it. But the closest thing that we have to that is light. And we know the sages tell us, one of the very first Rashis, that Hashem, Vayavdei, God separated the light. The or Habriya, the or of the light of creation, was too pure. He put that away for the world to come. But they borrow the terms. Moshe's mouth was too heavy to speak. It was too heavy. There were no physical, tangible, materialistic, heavy words to describe that which he had experienced. I mean, he tried to express something which there are no words to express. You start to go, you can't do it. So, Rav Chaim Vital wrote, source number 6, that the reason for rejoicing is for the students that Rabbi Akiva added afterwards, who did not die like those first 24,000. I write this as the basis to the custom mentioned above, to go to Meron and celebrate on Lag BaOmer, particularly because Rabbi Shimon Yochai was one of the 5 great students of Rabbi Akiva, and therefore his time of happiness is Lag BaOmer. There are also other customs that accompany this. The Toldot Ha'arizal tells the following story. Bimei Maran, during the days of our master. The master is Rav Yosef Karo. Rav Yosef Karo had wrote what we now have today as the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. We have that from Rav Yosef Karo. Fascinatingly, at the same time that he was writing his magnus opus on Jewish law, Rav Moshe Isserles, known as the Ramah, was writing his in Europe. And the Mechaber published his first and actually sent a copy of it to the Ramah to look it over. The Ramah realized that if he were to publish his own Shulchan Aruch, so to speak, his own code of Jewish law, then, and there were many differences in minhag, in custom, between the Sephardic tradition that Rav Yosef Karo was writing and the Ashkenazic tradition that the Ramah was writing, and he was afraid that if he would publish his own, then we would have 2 Torahs, so to speak, 2 books of halacha, and we would become 2 separate nations. And therefore, what he did was he rewrote. Instead of writing his own Shulchan Aruch, he took the Shulchan Aruch of Rav Yosef Karo, and he wrote notes. He wrote a gloss that where there is a difference, he'll write Umin Hagenu LeBnei Ashkenaz, and the custom amongst the Bnei Ashkenaz is, and he'll speak about what the custom is. So that way everybody learns, whoever is learning Jewish law, everybody learns the same exact Shulchan Aruch. And you have the Mechaber, you have the author, Rav Yosef Karo, and you have the Hagot, you have the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserles. And everyone who is halachically aligned and wants to know what the halacha is, everybody learns the same exact sefer. So in the days of our master, Rav Yosef Karo, they agreed that the Jews would not make a big celebration on Lag BaOmer at the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It seemed to our master and his Beit Din that it was degrading. People ate and danced there, right? People don't just go there to say Tehillim at his gravesite. There's singing, there's dancing, and when there's eating, right? And then there's barbecuing, and it becomes more like it can become more like a Woodstock than a serious spiritual event for many. Actually, when I lived in Israel earlier years, we would go on Zayin Adar. We would go to Meron on the seventh day of Adar. The reason being the seventh day of Adar is the yahrzeit of Moshe. And Kabbalistically, we're told that Rosh Yochai's neshama, his soul, was a spark of the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, we would go to his gravesite on Moshe's yahrzeit to avoid some of the revelry that often accompanies Meron. So the Rav Yosef Karo, the Mechaber, wanted to abolish it. This decision was written but not signed. The Arizal says that night our master dreamed. The Mechaber, Rav Yosef Karo, dreamt about Rav Shimon ben Yochai, who said to him that a great plague would befall the people because of this decision. This was not the decision to be made. It was his wish that they celebrate on the anniversary of his death and it not be muted in any way. The following day, Rav Yosef Karo tore up that decision and it was never sent out. And as we know, this day, there are massive celebrations that go on every year at Meron, on Lag BaOmer, on the yahrzeit of Rosh Yochai. Also, people wait until the third year in order to give their son their first haircut, the upsharing it's called. Many people would go to do that at Meron, at the gravesite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So that's what happens now. We go there, there's bonfires, and also a lot of tzedakah goes on there, feeding the poor, and that way in the zechut, right, in the merit of doing that, that is meant to be a zechut, a merit to help people, help those who are poor, and also as a zechut for those who are unable to have children. Lastly, there is the letter of the Bartenura and then Rav Kotler. The Bartenura is the classic commentator on Mishnayot, on the Mishnah, which is the oral Torah. On the 18th of Iyar, the anniversary of the death of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that's Lag BaOmer, it's always the 18th of Iyar. People come from all around and light big bonfires. In addition, they light many candles because many barren women were remembered and became pregnant, and many sick people were cured on the account of the gifts that they pledged to bring to the grave of Shimon ben Yochai at Meron. Rav Aaron Kotler writes as follows. Rav Aaron Kotler was the legendary founder of the Lakewood Yeshiva, which to date is the largest yeshiva, if not in the world, certainly in the United States. I think it's even bigger than the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. There are literally thousands of students who learn at the Lakewood Yeshiva. He started the yeshiva when the idea of having a place where boys are just completely immersed in learning on American soil was a very, very foreign concept. But he held on to that idea tenaciously and built his Lakewood Yeshiva, which, like I said, today is probably the largest yeshiva in the world. And he writes as follows. It is worth thinking about it from the other side. How great was the merit of the rabbis from the South who re-established Torah. The Torah should have been passed on through the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, and instead was passed on through these 5 students. Imagine taking 24 streams of water and trying to have them funnel through just 5, instead of 24,000 having just 5. Those who toil in Torah in our generation have a similar reward. Without them, the world would be desolate. And through these few individuals, remnants of the Holocaust, whom God calls Oskim B'Torah, those who toil in Torah, the Torah is not forgotten from the Jewish people. Remember, he founded this on the ashes of the Holocaust, when so many of these prominent yeshivas had been destroyed. The one yeshiva that remained intact from World War II Europe is the Mir Yeshiva, and they had many miracles that accompanied them. They traveled to Shanghai, and they set up shop there in Shanghai, and eventually made their way to the United States. And now there's a Mir Yeshiva in Brooklyn and a Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. There was a very, very wealthy benefactor who had built a large shul in Shanghai, which was not being used anywhere near its capacity. When the Mir Yeshiva made their way, miraculously, crazily, they made their way to Shanghai through Kobe, Japan. They made their way to Shanghai. That building was available for them to use. They went into that building, and the story as I heard it is that there was an exact number of chairs in the building for the amount of students that arrived. That it had all been divinely, providentially prepared in advance. And Rav Kotler, Rav Aaron Zatzal, rebuilt those European-style yeshivas on American soil. Now there are many like that, but that was groundbreaking, earth-shattering at the time. And he compared it to those 24,000 who have been decimated, and yet the 5 carried on, brought the Torah on, carried on with the Torah. When I lived in Israel, there was a wonderful Maggid by the name of Rav Yankala Galinsky Zatzal. And he once came and spoke at the yeshiva where I was teaching. And he shared with us a very beautiful idea along these lines. He said that he once spoke to the Rav of Panovich and said to him, our generation is greater than the generation of Chazal, of the sages, of the Talmud, which of course at first glance sounds ridiculous, because we know there is what's called Yeridat Hadorot. As we get further and further from Sinai, we become more distant and we become somewhat diminished. Yeridat, there is a downscaling of the generations. So how can we be greater than the generation of Chazal, of the sages? I'll give it to you. Chazal, the sages say, 1,000 students start to learn Chumash. Of those, the Torah, Bible. From those 1,000, 100 make it to Mishnah. From those 100, again, 10%, 10 of those 100 make it to Gemara, to the Talmud. And from that, once again, 10% make it to Hora'ah, to Psak Halacha. And he said, look at our generation. Of 1,000 that start to learn Chumash, a lot more than 100 go to Mishnah. From the 100 that learn Mishnah, a lot more than 10 make it to Gemara. So we're greater than the generation of Chazal in that respect. But how do we understand that? And he gave a mashal, he gave a parable, that there was this big, massive wedding planned in New York. And the caterer, 700 guests are all expected to come. And the caterer's cooking, preparing. And then out of the blue, all the meteorologists missed it. Out of the blue, there's this crazy blizzard, this snowstorm. And out of the 700 guests, 50, 55 people managed to trudge their way into this place, into the venue for this wedding. So what happens? The waiters come out of the kitchen with their trays filled with hot food, and they say, eat, eat, eat. Once it's out of the kitchen, it can't go back. Eat, eat, eat. And that's how much is given to each of the guests. And he explained that in the time of the sages, in the time of the Talmud, 1,000 showed up for Chumash. So then when you divide the siyata dishmaya, the heavenly help, you divide it amongst 1,000 of them, 100 make it to Mishnah, and 10 of them make it to Gemara. But in our generation, how many are showing up? We don't have 1,000 showing up. We have far less that are showing up. And therefore, those that do show up, they're given the trays of siyata dishmaya, of help from heaven, that says, eat, 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 do, grow, grow, accomplish, accomplish, learn, connect, connect. And that is why our percentage is greater than that of the sages. And there, 24,000 became 5. But look at the siyata dishmaya, that the heavenly help and uplifting that they received. And so too in our world, when there are so few that are coming forward, and we are the few, we are the mighty, that means that we have a tremendous A, responsibility, but B, there's a tremendous amount of gift, of help that we get to make sure that we can accomplish well in all that we do, of our own growth and the growth that we help to bring to others. On that note, once again, all of this was Le'iloi Nishmas, our dear friend Leon Etten, Zichrona Livracha, of blessed memory. We miss him very much. He was a regular here on our Lunch and Learns, and wish everybody a good Lag BaOmer, a good Shabbos. Hope we'll be seeing you at the gala dinner on Sunday night, and wishing everybody again Shavua Tov and a good Shabbos. And if you have not yet signed up for the Lag BaOmer, please, please, please do so. We're counting toward it. We're counting on it. Okay, everybody. Be well, everybody.
Be well, and Rabbi.
Bavakasha. Thank you, Ken.